Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. Now, we're usually here on Mondays, 4:30pm. I've been a bit lax recently in doing these vlogs, and I'm not going to commit to every single Monday anymore, just in case I let people down. But I'm going to try my best to keep them as regular as possible. And I just wanted to talk about the fight over the weekend, or the show at least, in Manchester, headlined by Conor Benn, dispatching an outgunned and probably a little bit over the hill Chris van Heerden. I nearly said Chris Algieri because it was very similar to Ben's last fight against Algieri. Was that his last one, or was there one in between? Either way, two Chris's, both beaten, both past their best and both beaten in very quick and brutal fashion. And it kind of makes me think now, Eddie Hearn did his post-fight interview with DAZN and with Ben and said, look, it now needs to be a step up in his next fight, big fight in the summer, and it needs to be one of these names. And he listed a few, I think, Kell Brook, Adrian Broner, David Avanesyan, and there was a couple of others in there as well. Thurman, I think, was one of them. And immediately people on social media, very sceptical, as you can imagine, given Ben's recent level of opposition, saying because Amir Khan was brought into the ring for a little cameo after Ben's victory. I think people were assuming that might be next, although Eddie Hearn seemed to rule that out in the immediate aftermath and said if Khan comes back, it won't be until late in the year. And after his performance against Kell Brook, no disrespect to him, I think most people would rather see Khan retire. So now we wait to see which of these potential big-name opponents Hearn is able to lure to London. He said he wants to put Ben back in his hometown in the summer. We shall see. But I think from my point of view and from the point of view of a lot of fans and observers out there, it really is time now for Conor Benn to step up the level of competition and to prove he's worthy of a world title shot in what is a very competitive division, a lot of depth at welterweight. And there's no excuse really anymore. Ben's fought the former champions past their best. He served his apprenticeship, no doubt, but now it's time for him to fight someone younger, hungrier, and the top 10 welterweight in the world. That was it. Danny Garcia and Mikey Garcia were also mentioned. Very high quality operators, but again, the other side of 30. I think it's important to note that the champions and the main top fighters at 147 pounds, Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, your Dennis Ugas, Spence, of course, stopping Ugas in a really good fight over the weekend. They're all the other side of 32, whereas Ben's still only 25 years old. So someone put a thing on social media recently saying the future of the welterweight division, and there was pictures of Ben, Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz, and someone quickly replied, one of these is not like the others, obviously referring to Ben. And you can see why, because Ben may be as talented as the others, he may be as big a threat on the world scene, but he's done little to prove that compared to those two guys. You look at Boots Ennis, next fight against Castillo Clayton. That's a genuinely, difficult fight on paper. I expect him to come through, but it's not a gimme. And he's already beaten someone like Sergei Lipinets, who's ambitious, tough, 147 pounder. Then you've got Virgil Ortiz, who's already been in with the likes of Mean Machine, who's, most people would consider a top 10 world welterweight. So he dispatched him with the minimum of fuss, and obviously was supposed to fight Michael McKinson, unbeaten WBO number 3, in what most people considered a bit of an easy fight for Ortiz, wrongly in my view, but again it shows that he's willing to test himself. We need to now see the same from Ben if he's to be talked about with the same kind of hushed, revered tones as those other two prospects / contenders now, I guess. So we want to see who's next for Ben. Who will it be? Kell Brook seems most likely, just because he's well known to the British fans. It'd be a box office fight, potentially, whatever platform it ends up on. And they'll gamble on the fact that Brook still finds it quite hard to make anything light welterweight. I'd expect that fight to happen around 150, 149 pounds. And they'll gamble on, Brook struggling with the weight and also being a little bit past his best. He looked spectacular against Amir Khan, but I think most people agree now that Khan looked pretty awful in that fight. So how much of a measuring stick that is for Brook is hard to gauge. So that seems the most likely at this point. But then you've got Avanesyan, which has been talked about for ages, more popular among the hardcore fans than the casuals, as Brook would be. But a very, very dangerous opponent, European champion on a great run of form. Does everything pretty well. If you look at my recent interview with Josh Kelly, he talks about how why Avanesyan's avoided and how he does a little bit of everything pretty well and is a formidable opponent for Benn or for anyone really on the fringes of world level. If Benn could beat Avanesyan in good style, then you would say, yeah, look, he's tested himself, he's worthy of that world title shot, even though Avanesyan is not as young as some of the other people I've talked about. It just seems like that one might be less likely to make, as Avanesyan is signed with Frank Warren, has got his own path, he's just waiting for a WBC eliminator, and the fight's been talked about for so long and hasn't been made. You've got to believe there's a reason for that. And then you look at some of the other veteran former champions that they've talked about, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia. Now, Mikey's quite small for the weight, so that might make him more attractive to the Benn team. Danny Garcia fights in spurts. Can he cope with Benn's explosivity and quick bursts and stuff? Because Danny does like to take some rounds off. Not sure. Again, past his best, arguably. Keith Thurman, a lot of inactivity in his career, coming off a decent performance, but we need to see him in more regular action to really work out what he's got left. But he seems perhaps the most talented at, as a full 147 pounder, which Mikey Garcia is not, albeit very, very talented, but hasn't looked the same fighter up at welterweight as he has in the lower weight divisions. And then, of course, we've got Adrian Broner, who they've wanted for Benn for the last couple of fights, but haven't been able to make it done or get it done. Problem with Broner is his price tag outweighs what he's got to offer at the moment. He's known as a draw, particularly on US TV. We're not sure if him against Benn will draw that well as he does in the US over here, but he is a name. He isn't on a great run of form. He's quite a lazy fighter as well, another one who likes to fight, take quite a few rounds off. He might fancy the job, but he hasn't looked in the best shape recently, so how fit and able he is for that fight is unknown. But he seems like the most beatable of the names mentioned, but it's just whether they can get that deal over the line, because he does value himself quite highly, and for good reason, but it's just whether that value translates across the pond at this stage of his career. So I'm not sure which of those it will be next for Benn. I'd obviously like it to be more of a test, a Thurman or an Avanesyan, as opposed to the small Mikey, the faded Broner, those sort of people. And probably, from a fan's perspective, Brook would sell really well. I'd really enjoy watching it. Brook really fancies his chances against Benn or against Chris Eubank Jr., another name with whom he's been linked. But I think from a getting Benn ready for the welterweight elite point of view, I think an Avanesyan or a Thurman would be better suited. Just before I go, I want to say big well done to Chris Billam-Smith on that show as well. Knockout in the 8th round in his rematch with Tommy McCarthy. I did predict he would stop McCarthy this time around. I've got the receipts to prove it. I don't get many right, but I crow about it when I do. But yeah, really good performance from him. And the sort of performance like we're looking for from Benn that makes me feel he might be ready for that step up to world level, genuine world level at cruiserweight. But yeah, back to Benn. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Who should Benn fight next and why? Very simple question. I'm sure there'll be lots of differing opinions, which I look forward to watching. I'm not going to say I'll be back on Thursday with ReFLEXions because it's Fury White fight week, which isn't easy to say, never mind do. I'm going to do my best, but there's going to be a lot going on. We are recording this evening a special edition of our podcast, You Don't Know Shit About Boxing, related to the Fury White fight. So that I can promise you. Thanks very much for watching and for bearing with me while the schedule's been a bit all over the place. I'll see you all soon. Cheers.